Okay, so we're going to go over factoring trinomials, okay, and these are just your basic trinomials here, x squared plus x minus 30. Okay, this should be pretty familiar to you guys. When I'm referring to a lot of these here, I'll refer to a, b, and c as we're going through. Where are the a, b, and c coming from? Well, it comes from our general form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so that's where I'm getting those letters from. So, starting up here, how do I factor this? Well, you guys are going to factor this by factoring by grouping, which we talked a little bit about, again, when you guys were on quarantine. But this is something that we did before you guys were on quarantine, so it should be familiar to you. So our first step when we want to factor a trinomial is you are going to find the product of A and C. Okay? Now, when I'm saying A and C, I'm referring to the coefficient of the first term times the coefficient of the last term. Okay? And the last term is a constant, so it should just be a number. So my A in this case would be a 1x squared. Okay, and then my c in this case is this 30. We ignore the minus sign in front. Ignore the minus sign in front. Okay, so I need to take 1 times 30. What is 1 times 30? Well, that is 30. Okay, so that's my first step. Find the product of A and C. Second step, I'm going to find the factors of the product of A and C. Okay, so what are the factors of 30? Well, there's 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, and 5 and 6. That's all the factor pairs. Okay? Now that we've decided that, we're going to pay attention to this sign here. This second sign tells us if we want our factor pairs. The second sign tells us if we want these factor pairs here to add or subtract. So since that is a minus sign, we need our factor pairs to subtract to give us the coefficient of our second term. That would be our b. Okay, so we need to find between these factor pairs up here, which one of them subtract to give me 1. Well, 30 minus 1 gives me 29, so it's not those. 15 minus 2 gives me 13. Not that. 10 minus 3 gives me 7. Nope. 6 minus 5 gives me 1. That's the one that I want. I need to use 5 and 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite my first and last term. So I've got an x squared and I've got a negative 30. I'm just rewriting those. Okay? And then I'm going to split this up using my two factors that I found, 5 and 6. So instead of having a positive x, now I'm going to have a 5x and a 6x. Okay? Our next step that we need to do is we need to figure out what signs need to go in front of 5x and 6x. Okay? So, not only does this minus sign tell us that we need our factor pair to subtract, that minus sign also tells us that the signs here have to be different. The signs in front of our two new terms have to be different. So one needs to be a plus sign, one needs to be a minus sign. Okay? So how do I tell which one's which? Well, I'm going to look at this sign in front of that x. Okay? If I made this a positive 5x and a negative 6, if I combine those two together, because I can, they're like terms, right? That would give me a negative x. Do I need this to be a negative x? No. I need it to be a positive x. So positive 5 and negative 6 is not the correct choice for our signs. So I'm going to try the other option. Well, the other option would be if I had a positive 6 and a negative 5. Positive 6 and negative 5. So check. If I added those two together, that would give me a positive x, which is what I wanted. Okay? So that's the signs that I need to have then. Now I'm going to do my factoring by grouping step. And what that means is I'm going to factor something out of these two terms, and I'm going to factor something out of these two terms. So the first two, x squared minus 5x, what do both of those have in common? Well, they both have an x, so we can pull an x out. Okay? If I pull an x out, I'm left with an x minus 5 on the inside. Okay? Next two, plus 6x minus 30. What do both of those have in common? Well, they don't have an x, but 6 and 30 have a common factor, and that common factor would be a 6. So you could pull a positive 6 out in front. That's important to have that plus sign there. If I pull a positive 6 out in front, I would be left with an x minus 5. Okay? Now when you do that, you should notice something. These two terms should match. Or those two factors should match. So since those two match, they come together and create one of our factors. And that one factor is x minus 5. Our other factor that we have is what's left over. So this x and this positive 6 come together to make our other factor. Okay? So x squared plus x minus 30 factors to x minus 5 times x plus 6. Okay? The one question that I get from a lot of kids is, well, how do I know what order these need to go in? And the answer is it doesn't actually matter which order they go in. Okay? So what I'll do is I'm going to erase this and I'm going to factor it with the plus 6 first and the minus 5 second. Okay? So just to prove that doesn't matter, I do an x squared plus 6x minus 5x minus 30. Okay? So what can I pull out of those two? I can pull an x out. I'm left with an x plus 6. Okay? Then on this one here, they would both have a 5 in common. But if this is negative, if this sign right here is negative, you want to pull out a negative 5. If that's negative, you always want to pull out a negative. So we're going to pull out a negative 5. And when I do that, that's going to change the signs there. So a negative 5x, I pull out a negative 5, I'm left with a positive x. I've got a negative 30. If I pull out a negative 5, I'm left with a positive 6. Okay? So the only difference is now there's an x plus 6 inside the parentheses, which comes together to make my first factor. Okay? And then I'm going to take the leftover and use that to make my other factor, which is x minus 5. And that's the same answer that I got on the last one. The order is just flipped. But the order won't matter because it's all multiplication. Okay? Hopefully that seems familiar to you guys. We've got a couple practice problems here. I'm going to run through both of them. If you want to pause it and try them on your own, go ahead and pause it and try them on your own. All right, so on this first one's a little bit different because we've got a plus sign here now. So I'm still going to take my 1 times 72, gives me 72. 1, 72, 2 and 36, 3 and 24. 4, does that go into anything? 4 probably does. Yeah. Oh, I don't know, guys. Struggling. We'll skip that because we won't need it. Last one is 8 and 9. Okay, so since this is a plus sign here, now we want these factors to add to give us our second number there. So they need to add to give us 17. 1 and 72 gives me 73. 2 plus 36 gives me 38. 3 plus 24 gives me 27. 4 plus, is it 18? 4 and 18, 32. Yeah, I'd be 18. So 4 plus 18 gives me 22. So none of those are viable options for us because they don't add to give me 17. But 8 and 9 would add together to give me 17. So 8 and 9 is my factor pair that I'm going to use. Okay? So I've got y squared, I've got plus 72, and then I need an 8y and a 9y. I'm going to split it up using these two factor terms here. Now, remember, the minus sign told me that I needed different signs. Well, the plus sign tells me that I need the same sign. So I've got a y squared, 8y, 9y. I'm either going to have a minus 8y and a minus 8y, or I'm going to have a positive 9y and a positive 8y. So we're going to look at this sign in front. Well, that sign's positive, so that means that I need to have a plus 8y and a plus 9y there. Okay? What can I factor out of these two? Well, I could factor out a y. I'm left with a y plus 8. What could I factor out these second two? I got that plus sign there, so I need a plus sign. And I could factor out a 9. Whoops, got ahead of myself. So I could factor out a positive 9, leaves me with a y plus 8. Both have a y plus 8, so that's one of my factors. My other factor is y plus 9. Okay? This one over here, a lot of you guys will look at this and you'll say, okay, I need factors of 3 that subtract to give me 5. And that is incorrect, because remember, our first step is we're going to take A times B. Okay? This time our A is not 1, our A is a 2. So my first step is I need to take 2 times 3, and 2 times 3 gives me 6. So I need factors of 6 that will subtract to give me 5. So I've got 1 and 6, and I've got 2 and 3. Okay? Now this is a very common mistake. I like using this one because it really shows me if you guys know what you're doing here. You need these factors to subtract to give me 5. A lot of you will be like, oh, I can make 2 and 3 give me 5. Okay? But 2 minus 3 gives me 1. Okay? We're not adding negatives in there. We're not doing anything with that. It's just simple math. Subtract the factors. Can that give you 5? No. 2 and 3 would add to give me 5, but not subtract. So it's not 2 and 3, but 6 minus 1 does give me 5. So 6 and 1 are the factors that I need to use. I've got a 2x squared. I need a 1x, a 6x, and then I've got a minus 3. Okay? And signs in front. Since this is minus, my signs need to be different. Okay? And I need it to be a negative 5. So that means my bigger number there, I'm going to want a minus 6 so that it'll stay negative, and then a positive 1. If you're ever unsure, check yourself. What's a negative 6x and a positive 1x? Well, it gives me a negative 5x. Okay, so that's what I wanted. I'm good with that. Now I'm going to do my factoring by grouping. 2x squared plus 1x. What do those two have in common? Just an x. So we'll have an x, and then there's a 2x in parentheses plus 1. Okay. Remember, if this is negative, we definitely have to factor out a negative. So 6 and 3, what do they have in common? Well, they both have a 3 in common. So we'll pull out a negative 3. I'm left with a 2x plus 1. 2x plus 1, 2x plus 1. That's one of my factors. The other factor is what's left over. So we'd have x minus 3. Okay, hopefully that sounds familiar to you guys. We are going to have one more video. Well, no, I'll just do it right now. Okay. Last thing we have here is how do you solve equations with these? Well, I've got an x squared and I've got an x. Okay, the only way I can solve an equation with an x squared and an x is that I have to set it equal to 0 and then factor. Okay, so I said that kind of quick, but the first step is set it equal to 0. So say this problem was x squared minus x equals 6. I can't solve this yet. I can't solve that yet. I have to make it equal 0 first. So my first step would have to be to subtract 6. X squared minus x minus 6 equals 0. Now I can factor to solve this. Okay? But it has to equal 0 before you can factor to solve this. So I need to list my factors. I've got 1 and 6. 1 times 6 gives me 6. I need factors of 6 that subtract. Factors of 6 that subtract to give me 1. Well, 3 and 2 are factors of 6. What's 3 minus 2? That's 1. So I'm going to use x squared, negative 6, okay, and then I need a 2x and a 3x, okay. Minus also means their signs need to be different. So one's a positive, one's a negative. Since this is a minus here, I'm going to want a negative 3 so that my answer when I combine those together will be negative. So positive 2, negative 3, that'll work, okay. And then I still have this equals 0 off to the side, and I just kind of keep that over there, and I won't need it till the very end. What can I pull out of those two? Well, I can pull out an x. I'm left with an x plus 2. That's got a negative, so I have to pull out a negative, and it's 3 and 6, so I can pull out a negative 3. When I do that, I'm left with an x plus 2. Remember, if you pull out a negative, you have to change your signs. Again, just an equals 0 off to the side there. This factors 2 and x plus 2 times an x minus 3 equals 0. Now, when I get to this point, I can set up two equations. So my two equations become x plus 2 equals 0 and x minus 3 equals 0. I can do that because in order for this statement to be true, one of those two has to equal 0. So we're going to assume that they both do. So I'm just going to solve. Minus 2 gives me x equals negative 2. Plus 3 gives me x equals 3. And these are my two answers. Okay? Do the on your own activities. We'll check those when we get back to class.